morning and welcome to MECCA Live here on Thursday, November 5th, 2020, making engaging community connections accessible. Remember, from Tuesday, our topic today is how to find calm in the storm. Before we go into that, I want to, first of all, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your patience as we navigate the different nuances of being on YouTube and on Facebook Live, remembering that the purpose for MECCA, making engaging community connections accessible, was to do that very thing, to share with you the resources and the businesses in our community, but then also just the heart and soul of our community, making sure that we understand and that we are present for the things that are taking place in our community, that the members of our community know that we're here and that we support each other, not just through this pandemic, through COVID, through elections, through the social unrest and things of that nature, but just in general, that we remember that we are connected within our community and to remain present in so doing. Now, I wanted to highlight a local business. I will show you the card, but also put it in the on the page, our Make Engaging Community Connections Accessible page, both on Facebook and Instagram. But the company, the business is Afro Rican Waist Beads, and the IG, the Instagram contact is Afro Rican _ waist beads, and that's what the business card looks like. I will also take a picture and post it on our page. But I want to show you the beads, and just keep in mind that these are made for me. Many of you know that I am, in fact, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And so the beads that were made specifically for me are my colors, the colors of my sorority, and the elephant. Isn't that beautiful? And they're waist beads, and there's a lot of history behind waist beads, specifically of African tradition. I'm going to put this back in the bag because I haven't put them on yet. I wanted to share them with you before I did so. Many times people wear them and they don't take them off. So I learned from Miss Ziamata, who made them for me, that the beads can be connected with cotton thread or elastic, I think that's what she said. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but again, her information will be loaded on the pages so that you can see her other merchandise. But a lot of times people wear the beads and they don't take them off. There's a lot of different history and tradition behind that. But generally, what I've learned is that it's a symbol of femininity and fertility and sensuality, and it does have some spiritual connotations as well, depending upon the tradition that you subscribe to. But there's a lot of history behind it. They're just beautiful, and she made them specifically for me. So I wanted to give her a shout out because she does that on the side. She has a different profession that she participates in and practices during the day and during the week. So thank you so much, Miss Lee, for those Afro-Rican beads, waist beads. I will put them on now that I've shared them with our viewers and listeners. So I wanted to put that out there. But let's get right into our topic. The topic today is how to find calm in the storm. There's a lot of storms, right? Right now, many of you know that we are recording this out of Southwest Florida, and we remain in hurricane season. And I've been told that there's another hurricane on the horizon. And so 2020 has been a fascinating year for many things, not just the pandemic and the economy and the election, but I mean, just look at the hurricane season. There have been many and several back to back. But with that being said, when we think about storms, sometimes when we think about storms, it's like right now, like the example I just gave, relegated to where I live. Like I'm right now living in a situation in an area that is in hurricane season. But have you ever been through a storm? There's a lot of information and resources available that relate to post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I think previously when we were having our live sessions weekly, every day, in one of them, we talked about post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I gave some information regarding I wish I could remember the name of the community in West Virginia, but there was a community in West Virginia where the dam burst and it left the town devastated. And what ended up happening was a lot of the research on post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic stress syndrome a lot of the research that supported this syndrome, the research that supported it and lended credence to what we now know and what we've now discovered with the secondary issues and secondary victims of post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of it got its roots from a study that was done based on the reactions and the residual reactions of those survivors of that storm where the dam burst. And it ended up being where so many had, the next time it rained, a heavy rain took them, in this place of anxiety and different symptoms that now we know and now we associate with anxiety and we associate it with having witnessed or experienced the trauma. But when we think about a storm, it could be an emotional storm. It could be the impact of something that happened that didn't physically affect you. So maybe not an attack, or maybe not a car accident, or maybe not something along those lines, but an emotional situation, or maybe it's a financial impact, or maybe it's the loss of a loved one. And when I say loss, I don't just mean death. I also mean there's this grieving process when relationships are severed, either an abrupt breakup or divorce, or even when someone close to you has moved away. There's that grieving process, right? But these storms, and the reason why I took the time to talk about the different types of storms is because what may be a storm for me, what may be something that leaves me reeling, where I'm struggling to maintain my balance, my emotional, my physical, my mental balance, whatever it is that's having an impact on my stability as it relates to my ability to go day to day, daily activity, daily living activities, or financial activities, whatever the case may be. That storm may be different for me than for you. What may cause me to reel back and forth may be just like a pebble in your road. And so I want to be sure that I include different types of storms so that people understand that it doesn't have to look like my storm. And what may seem trivial to somebody else may in fact be a storm for you, and that is okay. You get to define and qualify what your storm is. But back to the topic, how do we find calm in the midst of our storm? Like, what does that even mean? Like, if I'm being torn and tossed to and fro by this situation, by these circumstances, and keep in mind, I'm going to keep trying to make this relevant to right now. And when I say right now, I mean the uncertainty of this pandemic, the uncertainty of the election, the uncertainty of not just healthcare, but healthcare across the nation, and what that's going to mean in the coming months, right? What does that mean financially? So a lot of people have been impacted, and the impact has been compounded by several storms or several waves of maybe the same storm, right? Maybe the impact of the pandemic has affected my finances, but now someone in my family has been diagnosed with it, right? They've come to be COVID positive, and now they're being hospitalized. So there's that second wave, right? From the same kind of storm. So what do I do with that? What do I do with that? And I want to take this time now to share that what we won't do is give tip it answers like, oh, you'll get over it. This too shall pass. While there's validity in this too shall pass, and while that has been in its best context a mantra to stay the course, it in and of itself is not an answer. It's kind of a non-answer when someone is in the middle of their storm. This too shall pass. Okay, if I have a relationship with that person and and the relationship serves as the context for me saying that, that's different. But just off rip, this too shall pass, that doesn't help me out right now in the moment, right? So what we won't do here is give these kind of one line stays where people are like, okay, that's enough for me to get by. That's enough for me to understand. That helps me put things in perspective. Because just saying it and moving on serves really no true purpose, especially since it's difficult for me to know who all is watching and where you are in your own storm. So if I say something like that, and I'm taking the time deliberately to qualify how how I speak, because we do speak life here, right? So if I do say that, I'm going to unpack it for you, and hopefully, um, it being unpacked or it being explored further illuminates in different ways for you that hopefully helps you along your way. But when we think about the storm and what it means for different people and how that resonates, I know for me, and I've grown in my personal growth, so it doesn't impact me the same way. But I remember being younger, and when something happened, like something like a storm, unsettled my stability, thinking and concentrating became difficult. So if something happened, like a major disturbance, relationship wise, or something at home or whatever, and then I get on a school bus to go to school, I'm like, what did you say? Like, I'm still there. And I remember being in my, oh boy, how old was I? I don't remember how old I was when the movie Apollo 13 came out. And you're going to hear me make a lot of movie references, but I don't remember how old I was when Apollo 13 came out. I want to say I was in my 20s, but I'm not sure. I remember the scene where, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, spoiler alert, but it came out in the 90s or something like that. But I remember the scene where Tom Hanks, he played the main character, when his wife didn't want him to leave. Don't go on this one. Don't go on this mission. Like, their mission got like scrubbed, I think is the term they use, because Gary Sinise, his character, they said that he'd been exposed to the measles, so he couldn't be, in outer space and come down, with the measles. So they had to replace him. And I think the person that they replaced him with, the actor, was Kevin Bacon. And the reason why I'm saying the actors instead of the actual names is because I know somebody's gonna be like, did I watch that? Let me check it out. And if you forget the name, just remember Paulo something, and these were the actors. But anyway, it ended up being where the character for Tom Hanks had to decide if he was going to go on to the next mission. And because the mission that he had trained for, and they practiced, and he says in the movie, we could read each other's, tone of voice. You're going to mess up this team right now. Well, if you want to be on this next mission, then this is the team you'll utilize. So he had a decision to either not go on this one, because I believe that was going to be his last one, or miss out completely. Either go with the new team or with the new team member, or miss out completely. And so he made a decision to go. And his wife was just like, I'm not feeling this one. Please don't go. Please don't go. And then they had a little tiff. And then he went off to training and to prep for takeoff. And she was in the shower. She wasn't going to come. She was like, I'm not going to go. And she was in the shower, and she was taking a shower, and her wedding ring went down the drain. And then she decided to go, and he wasn't expecting to see her because she said she wasn't going to go. But there, everybody was greeting, the astronauts, not everybody, but loved ones and people that were cleared to go, were greeting the astronauts one last time, and then they prepared for liftoff. And I remember when he left after the whole argument, I was like, how are you going to leave like that? Like, I was so unsettled watching it, like, oh my goodness, like, I don't think that I would have to resolve that because that would just disturb my spirit. I wouldn't be able to go on. And he was like, this is what I need to do. Boom. I was thinking, would I ever be able to do that? I've grown past that. But that I shared that because I want you to understand that I get that we deal with things differently and storms are different. So let's just go ahead and delve in. Some people will say, I deal with my storm with meditation. Some people will say, I deal with my storm, I keep the calm. When things around me are swirling and uncontrollable, and I have no say over what comes next, right? When things are uncertain and it's a lot of, instability or things impacting my stability, these are the things that I do. And so some people say yoga, and some people say meditation, and some people say me time. Some people say I do what gives me life, i.e. my hobbies or my passions or the organizations that I'm a part of or affiliated with, or causes that I'm focused on or that I've taken on as a part of me. What are those things, right? For you, excuse me. What are the things for you that give you life? What are the things that you can delve into that kind of give you a sense of, oh, okay, I'm going to be okay. This too shall pass. You see how I put it in context? What are those things? And if you don't have them, how can we find them? Where can we get to this place where this is my go-to, right? So let's do this in stages. So when I feel myself starting to lose myself, right? If I'm listening to something or I'm part of something, that whether it be a group on social media or I'm listening to the news or I'm having some kind of interaction that could potentially become some sort of an altercation, how do I find so that I'm not sucked in, so that I don't go down a road I don't want to go down, so that I, as my family would say, I stay in my right mind. Have you lost your mind? How do I do that? How do I navigate this? Right. Sometimes it's music for some of us. And I want to say this before I go forward. When I have these conversations with people in person, I try to have them pick three different things initially, three different things. And the three different things in three different settings. What is a good go-to to help you find your calm if you're driving? Because if reading is one of them, that's not going to work so well unless you have an audiobook handy, right? If you're driving. What is it going to be if you're in a situation where you have to maintain a certain presence, whether you're at work or within your organization or whatever the case may be? So something that you can access, three different things in three different settings where you have to be hands-free or you have to be in a professional setting, or when there's unlimited access, right? So if you're at home and you have to worry about, the kids or time commitments or appointments and obligations like that, right? So sometimes it's music that helps, and sometimes we have a go-to song. Sometimes some of us have go-to songs when we're angry, go-to songs when we're excited, or go-to songs when we're discouraged or whatever, right? Some of us have places. I know for me, when things tend to stop making sense or become like cumbersome on my spirit, if I can, I'll just go outside. Something about being outside in nature, you saw me look this way because the window is that way, resonates. I just being outside and I love trees. So watching the trees and the breeze or whatever the case may be, think about it for a moment. What are the things that give you life? What are the things that help you calm down? And right now I'm asking you across the board. Don't tell me, don't put it in the comments. But what are the things that give you life, right? Sometimes it may not be something that you're proud of. It may be, a habit or a vice that doesn't do your body well. But what are they? It doesn't serve us in this path of professional growth and personal growth if we make a mental note or make a decision and say, "Ooh, I'm not going to share that. I'm not going to acknowledge that. I'm not even going to look at that because I really shouldn't be smoking or shouldn't be drinking or shouldn't be, if I come home and had a hard day and have a glass of wine, that's not something I want to put out there." But at least look at it yourself. At least be honest with yourself. Because if there's something inside you that is looking at the things that you do to find your calm and it's disturbing, or you can't say with confidence that I have a glass of wine at night and it helps me feel better. And I'm saying that specifically because that's one of those things that people say, well, it's not that big of a deal, right? This has to match your morals. It has to match your integrity. It has to match what is good and right for you, right? Obviously, I'm going to encourage you to stay legal. But at the end of this conversation, what are things? Let's just look at it honestly for what it is. What are the things that give you life? What are the things that help you find your calm? Is going out on the lanai smoking a cigarette something that works for you? And if so, why? Because one of the things you'll remember, those of you who watched or participated and joined our Making Engaging Community Connections Accessible live sessions in the past, is I'm always going to ask you why. Because if you don't know the why, that's where we need to start. For you to be in complete and total control of your whole person, understanding what and why, this affects me how? Okay, so why is that? And at that point, you can start replacing some things. If there are things in your toolkit that you want to replace or that you're not proud of, or you're like, I want to have more than just that, right? This is where we begin. So what are those things that help us find our calm? Is it music? Is it our hobbies? Is it yoga? Is it meditation? What is it? Is it spending time with your family? Is it that one friend that always helps you find your center and become back grounded into who you are, back into your core values, to where you feel like you're less overwhelmed. And even while this stuff is happening, you're still navigating. It's kind of like when you're driving your car, those of you who are watching that drive and have driven through water in the storms. Again, I'm tapping back into Florida, but most of the country has had different types of storms where there's enough water between your tire and the pavement. So you understand what I'm talking about, right? The hydroplaning. So what do you do when you're driving to get control back of the car? What do you do when you feel yourself starting to become overwhelmed and you feel yourself starting to become frazzled, right? And then now, as we in context, as we relate to the storm of the pandemic and the storm of the elections and the storm of the social unrest and the storm and the storm and the storm and the storm, when they're compounded like that, how do you maintain and sustain during those times? And remember, when we have these conversations, we're talking about where we go here so that we are still in control. We don't lose our mind, so to speak. And that's in parentheses. So we don't get to this place of, right? Or just whatever, forget about it. Because a lot of us are reaching that saturation point where we don't see a lot of headway in certain situations, in certain storms, right? We don't see the end. We don't see the silver lining. We don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it becomes daunting. And for us to get to a place where we're not fixated on metering the light at the end of the tunnel, but sustaining the light that's in here, we have to figure out where we get that energy, where we get that ability to continue to go on. How do we do that? And it starts with looking at the things that help us calm down initially and the things that give us life. So let's go there. If I were to ask you, what are the things that give you life? And what I mean by that is, when I do this, when I go here, when I speak to this person, when I listen to this music, it just rejuvenates me, right? I feel uplifted. I feel inspired. I feel motivated. What are those things? Are they certain authors? Are they certain musicians? Is it certain places? Is it certain practices? And that's why a couple of things that I mentioned, people say, I find it in meditation. I find it in my me time when I do something that's just for me. And people laugh when people say, when I go get a massage. That gives you life? Yes. That's part of self-care. And understand, when you're getting a massage, things are being released. That's moving energy around. That's moving, like for those of us who work out and are physically active, we know that we have to eat a certain way. We have to drink a certain way. We have to stretch. And some of that is not just because we want to look a certain way to be healthy. Obviously, those are the, being healthy is paramount. But when we stretch after doing a workout, especially a rigorous workout, we're moving around lactic acid. You don't think that stuff moves around when you get a massage? Your body and your muscles are being physically manipulated. Things are released. Same thing with yoga, same thing with meditation. And so these are things, I'm not trying to put things in your mind, but I want you to think outside the box. Like, what are your hobbies, right? Some of you know that I paint. I did not do that painting. That painting was a gift from me from Mr. Holheimer, an amazing artist, but that was a gift for my baby shower for my daughter. It was my last child, my second and last child. And that was his gift to me because I loved his paintings. And it's a jazz piece. So I say jazz, it could be Latin because I see them doing it. It looks like they're doing salsa merengue. But anyway, what are those things? I love to paint. I love to write. I love different things. And so sometimes I'll be in a space and I want to paint and just give me life. And sometimes I may not want to paint, but I may want to write, right? So having different things in the toolkit, what is it? Things that give you life. It may be a hobby. It may be a pastime. What are the things that if I were to say to you, or if I were to ask you, what is me time to you? And what do you do with your me time? It may come from there. These are things for you to start thinking about what gives you life, and what are those go-tos, and how can you spend more time with that? How do we focus? Now that we talked about that, how can we focus when all this stuff is happening around us? How do I say, okay, you know what? Time out. I have to first be aware, and I said it on Tuesday, and you're going to hear it more often than just Tuesday and today. At the point of awareness becomes the point of accountability. That's when accountability begins. And that's why I keep asking these questions, and my follow-up will be why. Thank you, Ed Taylor, because I got that from you. But when all these things are swirling around us and we're trying to find our bearings and and staying, coming back into this kind of calm, regardless of what's happening around us, that doesn't happen without a deliberate decision. I make the decision that I'm going to find the way when I get sucked in. When I become aware, that's accountability. When I become aware that I've gotten sucked in, how do I come back to my calm? I need to know what it's like when I begin to feel overwhelmed. How do I know? What's the buildup, right? Some of you may remember from before, when I had my first migraine, I had no idea what was happening. Went to the doctor. I'll give you a short version. Went to the doctor. The doctor said, well, this is a migraine. Did several tests. This is a migraine, and I told my mom, look, I had a migraine. I've never had one. I thought I was losing my mind. My mom said, oh, yeah, they run in the family. How come I didn't know that? But my point is this. The doctor said, I need you to think about and pay attention. I need what leads up to the migraine. Because she asked me, this was many, many years ago. She asked me, she said, prevention or intervention? What are we interested in? And I was like, what? And she said, prevention or intervention. If you want intervention as a treatment, then you're going to have to know when to take this medication, because the medication that we will utilize for intervention has to be taken within a certain window. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. Prevention means you'll take something every day. I'm not big on taking something every day. So I said, okay, intervention. So she said, okay, if you're not aware, if you know now, tell me now, because then that'll help me kind of fine tune the type of medication we'll consider. But if you don't, you have to pay attention. So if you know what leads up to the migraine, what does it feel like? And I said, well, it feels like an elephant sitting on top of my head, just kind of scrunching everything in my neck and head. She said, okay, do you know what it feels like prior to the elephant sitting down? I said, mm-hmm. The elephant walks up the back of my neck, and then boom. She said, when the elephant starts to walk, that's when you have to take this medication. So I say that, I share that with you for the awareness piece. What are the things that lead up? How does it feel right before you realize you're overwhelmed? What does that feel like? Because that's what's going to help you dial back and get into that place where you can best utilize the lower rung of your go-tos to find your calm, right? It's kind of like when we do anger management. You can't utilize counting to 10 when you're full on in your full on rage or you're full on anger. Counting to 10 helps you bring it back down. And you can once you're angry, but you have to make the decision to do so. By the time you've made the decision, you've already started to. Ideally, counting to the 10 deep breaths and counting to 10 is when you first start to feel frustrated and it's going in that direction. Let's bring it back. Because it's hard to count and it's hard to catch your breath when you're already in that cycle, right? And that's why we want you to count to 10, and that's why we want you to take the deep breaths, because that keeps you calm. When we're angry or when we're full-blown frustrated, we're already in that spiral. The oxygen, the clear mind, making the decisions that are going to keep us stable are kind of everywhere. It's kind of like in the movies when the person's running from the monster or the bad person and the keys are falling, and that fine motor skills, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So starting there, understanding being aware of how that plays out and what's the lead up, right? But the other pieces, there are three other pieces I want to illuminate as it relates to how can I focus on staying calm, and how can I focus and remember to go to my go-tos in the middle of all of this. Three things I want to illuminate. One is schedule, one is practical, one is consistency. Let's start with the schedule. Be deliberate. Be deliberate and intentional. If this is going to be a preventative, right? I want to put some preventative measures. I want to put some barriers up to keep me from getting to that point. When I get to this place, I know, step it back. That's why we have the guardrails on the road, right? You don't see many people just driving along the guardrail because the guardrail is there. Then there's usually some space, and then there's the line, and then there's the lane, and okay, so the guardrail is not the first, means of safety and protection. There's a couple of different things in between the road and the guardrail. Again, depending upon where you are and where you're traveling, so keep that in mind. But my point is this: if I build things into my schedule that kind of help me stay within this kind of ebb and flow of stability, whether it's spiritual or mental or physical, whatever the case may be, emotional, that kind of helps me stay within this range and this gauge, right? To help me gauge where I am. And so be practical in the schedule, but be deliberate. So if I say once a week, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, or once a week, I'm going to participate in this, or I'm going to go here, or whatever the case may be, put it on your schedule. Put a reminder in your phone. Write it someplace so that you don't have you're not, it's not easy for you to forget yourself. Because some of us, because of our role in the family or because of what we do for a living, it's customary, it's a routine for us to put other people first. And that's okay to a degree. But as a mother, I have to be at my optimum to be able to give completely to my children. If I neglect myself, I'm by default neglecting my children. I hope that makes sense. So be deliberate. I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to look at my schedule, and this is the segue right into practical. I'm going to look at my schedule and say, hey, this is the best time. Because if I say if I have to be at work at 9:00 and I say I'm going to do this at 8:30, how practical is that? It may be practical, but look at your schedule and make sure that when you decide to build this into your schedule, it's practical for you. You're less likely to forget. It's within your time management, so it doesn't place an undue hardship on managing time when we're already in a space of uncertainty. So position it so that you position yourself in the best place to be successful with this thing that you're gonna commit to happening routinely. So whether that's once a day, whether that's once a week, whatever it is for you, whatever the thing is and whatever the timing is, be deliberate about that schedule and put it on your schedule. Put it on your paper schedule, put it on your phone, however you navigate that. But when I'm serious about not forgetting something, it's in the calendar on my phone, it's on my paper schedule, and I put an alert. The second thing about being practical, kind of went into that a little bit with the timing, with the schedule, but timing and location. Be practical about that. If this is something that you want to do, but you can't do it when, if weather's going to preclude that, then have a backup plan and make sure that that backup plan is available and practical when you're doing this scheduling and timing, and note that in the schedule. Case in point, in my schedule, if I have to be someplace, because many of you know I've done have a job change, and so I am working for myself now. And so when I'm navigating many different things, sometimes it's not as easy for me to recall the street number, or I'm sorry, the building number, even if I remember the street. And so what I do is in my calendar, I put where it is, who it is, and then the first part of the address, the part I've become, what's the word I want to use? I can't think of the word, but it's become almost routine where I will at some point have to stop and think about the address, and I don't want to do that. So to maximize the time, I put the organization or the name or whatever, and then the beginning part of the address, and I've saved it in my Google Maps. I've given it a different name because the last thing I want is someone to be able to hack my stuff and get into information. I give it a different name, and boom. So why am I telling you this? These are things that I've built in. I don't always use that. After the second, usually the second time of me going someplace, I kind of remember. Not just remember how to get there, but I tend to remember the number. But what if something happens? I want to position myself that as much as I can prepare ahead of time to be proactive. If something should happen, these are the different ways I can still access this information without it becoming a difficulty or a hardship on my schedule, on my ability to provide for the people that pay for my services. So if we do that at work, right? If we do that for our finances, if we do that for our kids, if we do that in planning for our families, why would we do less when it comes to us being able to maintain in this time of storm? So be practical, in your timing, be practical in your locations, be practical in your backup. Don't just have one thing that you're going to do. Have a couple of things and make sure that if this is not available, then this is available. That may mean having certain music in your car. That may mean, if music is your go-to, that may mean having certain things accessible via Bluetooth as necessary, right? If it's an audiobook, whatever the case may be deliberate in that. And in order to do this successfully, it's going to take you some sit down quiet time to really process this. Not that it's difficult, but for you to be deliberate, you have to take different things into consideration and take account for your life. So think about how you eat, think about your timing, think about where you go, think about how much time you have at home, how much auxiliary time you have when you're planning this, because that may play a role in it as well. The last one, consistency. So if there's something that you're going to do and you're going to build into your schedule, be consistent. Be consistent, because once you're consistent, it becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit and you're consistent with your habit, it will become a lifestyle. Saying no was the first means of me really taking my self-care seriously, and my calm and my spirit. Having to tell someone that I answer to no was something that was more difficult for me than I realized, because I really didn't have a problem saying no. It was just situational. And I had to tell people no. And I had to stand there on my no. I had to support myself and I had to back up myself. I had to be my own support, cheerleader, and navigator. Because in Zynga, if you're really going to be not taking work home, if you're really going to be in control of your mood and affect, if you're really going to continue to be cultivating this space of safety for your spirit, safety for your mental health, safety for your physical health, you have to do less after hours. You have to maximize your work time, which means you're going to have to maintain those healthy boundaries that you set up. And part of that maintaining healthy boundaries for me was to say no. I cannot do that today. I can do it tomorrow, later on in the week. So it wasn't an outright no, but it was a no for right now. Yes, because these are the things that I'm required to do. These are the things that are expected of me. These are the things that are due now. This is the time frame. So this requires time management. But it also requires your ability to say no, and to know when to say yes, and to know when to say not now, right? So there are a couple, see how these things intersect? But schedule deliberately. Be practical in your timing and location and your scheduling. Make sure that you have backup plans and that you are able to position yourself and your schedule in a way that you're least likely to forget. Keep the commitments you make to yourself, because those are the ones that are going to give, that are going to produce a bountiful harvest, right? And then consistency. But when you think about what gives you life, make it happen. Make it happen. And maybe it's a once a month thing. Maybe some of the things that give you life are once a month, and maybe some of the things that give you life are once a week or once a day. It's up to you, but please build in something. It could be family time. And I know some people are like, we do family time, and some people are like, oh, that's what suffered. You think about, we're in the midst of this pandemic. We have nothing but family time, but do we really? Just being in the same space with our family doesn't necessarily always qualify as family time. So what do I mean? Have something structured that qualifies for your family time. What's today? Thursday. Thursday night's game night. And if you've had that and you stopped, pick it back up. And if game night is too cumbersome, and maybe it's an age thing, and maybe the parts of the family that would enjoy game night in the middle of the week are working. Okay, something else. Maybe it's something that requires a smaller amount of time. You'll remember, those of you who participated and were live with our previous MECCA live sessions, I would give you these little homeworks, right? If you remember some of those, and I can bring some of those back, but just things that you can do with your family, because we're looking at quality, not quantity. Now, obviously, there are some things that you may pick that require a certain amount of time. You can't do quickly, okay? But think about that. Think about the things that are packed with quality, that meet the schedule of those involved. So maybe it's family time. Maybe it's date night with your spouse or your significant other, your partner. Maybe that's what it is. And maybe date night may not necessarily be going out and spending money. Maybe it may be being creative in that space and that time with just you and that person. Maybe having more of them. Maybe having, different types of, hey, maybe it's lunch. Maybe it's I send them something. You know what I'm saying? Like they're at work and they're not expecting me, and then they get, and it's not necessarily flowers or whatever. Sometimes it's lunch. Someone did that for me. That my previous job, someone said, "Where do you want to eat today?" And if you could eat lunch wherever, and I said, "Whew, I wanted Panda Express. All I wanted was Panda Express." And they said, "Okay." I was like, "Why are you asking me that? Check at the door." Like they didn't say anything. Like 30 minutes later, check your door. And I was like, I opened it, I looked, and there was somebody like bending over. I was like, whoop, whoop. And they had ordered lunch for me. So be creative, you know. As difficult and saddening and disheartening as this pandemic has been and is outright, we've seen the different takes on humanity. Some people have been so diehard, staunch on their views and opinions about the pandemic and the different PPEs that other people don't matter to them. And then on the other hand, some people that their views may vary as it relates to qualifying the pandemic, they still said, you know, I don't think this, I don't think that, but I am going to make sure that I'm respectful of other people in their space. But the point for me bringing that up is we have gotten to see just how creative and how resilient we are as human beings with this pandemic. I've seen amazing ceremonies because people have had to adjust and adapt and become creative in their birthdays and in their weddings and their graduations here in 2020 with this pandemic. So do the same when you're creating this time and space with yourself and others, specifically as it relates to family time and date nights and things of that nature. And then daughter/son time, when it's just you and that child, whatever that may be, inside their temperament, your temperament, inside in the context of your relationship. That's where we can maximize this time that we've had, right? We can look at it as this daunting period, which it can be from time to time, but it doesn't have to be across the board. This 2020 doesn't have to just be, it was a horrible year. It was a very difficult year for sure. But inside this year, inside this time, inside this space, what are the things that give you life? What are the things that happened in 2020 that were amazing? What are the things that you're grateful for right now? In the middle of this struggle, can I pick out 3 things that give me life? Can I pick out 3 things for which I'm grateful? Can I? 3 things just today? Yeah. My kids are healthy. Yeah. My son's at work. Yeah. I have a job. Yeah. Okay. I'm in my right state of mind. The electricity. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Stop right there. And sometimes that's the deal. That's the game changer. Sometimes stopping in the middle of this, 3 things I can be grateful for, does not disqualify what's swirling around. Does not make the things that are happening around us less significant, because I'm not that person. I'm not going to say, oh, get over it. You know, at least you have this. No, not at least. Not at least. Because that minimizes and dismisses. The storm around you is significant because it's impacting you, period, in a discussion. You don't have to qualify it for me. Because it's impacting you, that's your storm. Yes. Inside your storm, are you able to bring your awareness, becomes accountability, are you able to bring your awareness to, I am grateful for this, 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 and this? And then maybe that's where you begin your finding my calm. For me, gratitude was huge. Was huge because it was like, you know what? Okay. So I could feel the life coming back to me. And sometimes it comes back halfway, depending upon what the storm is. Okay, what's the next thing I can do? And that's why you want to make sure that your stormproof kit has more than one thing in it, more than one skill, more than one tool, right? Okay. I want to say this last piece and then we will wrap up and I will tell you what's going to come on next week. But as it relates to our personal journey and finding the calm in the storm, the things that can help us come back to our center, the things that can help us find our we used to say to the kids I used to work with a long time ago, finding your clear mind, whatever that may be, to find your calm and become grounded or centered or whatever it is for you within your practical journey. This is it. All those other pieces I gave you, scheduling and being practical and consistent and habits, create a habit, and habit creates a lifestyle. All those things are key pieces. And what gives you life and what are your hobbies and what are the things that motivate you onto it in the middle of your storm. But if this is the takeaway, practice. practice. Once you figure out what it is or what they are, practice. Earlier I mentioned yoga. It's not magical. It's cause and effect. It's principles of energy. It's not anything, it's not any hocus pocus. It's not anything like, oh my mat, and all of a sudden I'm here and I'm here. That's not what it is. It's me making a decision to stop. It's me making a decision and having a place, my mat. And the mat is portable. But even still, a lot of things that I practice in yoga, I can do in my chair and I can do while driving. Because a lot of times I lose my calm when I'm driving. We'll leave that alone. But my point is, it's a space and time that I predetermine that this is where I do this, right? And I make a decision to clear my mind. I make a decision to focus on breathing. See how breath is connected to everything? And then I connect my breathing to different movements, usually that have something to do with where I store my stress. And I breathe into those movements. I breathe into those spaces. Now, that's not all yoga is, but that's where it started for me. And that's why, for me, yoga and meditation is one of the things that are in my toolkit. But practice. I'm not going to get this flow if I don't practice. It's not going to be my go-to if I don't practice it. If I don't know what it is and I haven't explored how it works or the impact that it has on me, then it's going to be hard for it to be a go-to, right? How many people, when you've been going through something, have said, I'm here for you? You put something on Facebook, or somebody knows of something that happened with you or your family, and they send you these texts and they're, we're here for you, we love you, da-da-da. If I ask you right now to name 10 of those people the last time, who would they be? You might be able to, because it may be the same 10 people. But if you don't know who they are, specifically using Facebook as an example, all these people, you put something out, they keep me in your prayers, and then people say they're praying. Can you? No. If you don't know them, my daughter says, if you say it twice, then it's emphatic. There's the emphasis. But if I don't have a relationship with these people, then I'm not going to be able to recall them, right? If I don't have a relationship with this practice or this skill or this item in my toolkit, then is it going to be a readily available go-to? No. Practice. Evaluate and then practice. Evaluate and then practice. And you know that my two go-tos as far as these types of analogies are athletes in sports and the military. So if any of you are athletes or have been athletes, if any of you have ever played, if any of you have ever been in the military, what do? You practice. Athletes, when you practice, where's that evaluation piece? The film. You practice. And my coaches always said, you play like you practice, so practice like you're going to play. This is real time. This is real game. Let's go. Don't just, I'm practicing. It's just practice. There was no such thing as just practicing. If you ever let just practice come out your mouth, it was ugly for the whole team. But my point is this: if you play like you practice and you practice like you're playing, it will become second nature. But where's the evaluation piece? Okay, practice, game time. Somebody's filming it. One of your coaches or a designated person on the team is filming it. And then you review the film. You practice that. How come that? Okay. Because we know practice and situations are different. We know that there's that variance, right? But practice, evaluate, and then practice. So that practice that comes after the evaluation is practice with the knowledge you gained from the evaluation. So you see, this is a living, breathing thing. And that's how it becomes a habit, which becomes a lifestyle. Practice, evaluate, practice. You have your sport. Playing an instrument. We may be practicing because we're in a recital. And we may play like we practice. We may get extra nervous on the day of. But we don't have that relationship with our instrument if we're not spending time with it. If we're not practicing with it. If we don't have scheduled routine time, that consistency. That's how that works. So please remember, there are different ways to find the calm in your storm. Identify what your storms are. Identify the things that give you life that will help provide that calm that you can easily go to. Because Think about what happens in a storm. We're hydroplaning. How do we get the bearings back? Do we let off the gas? Do we tap the brake? Do we steer into it? How does that work? Those of you, I said us because I'm from up north, but those of you who live up north, when you're driving and you hit a slick patch of ice, how do you get control again? What are those things? And we can know it here, but until you're behind the wheel and you have to put it together, there's that part. And that's why practice is important, because knowing it and practicing it, the distance between mastering it is that piece between knowing and doing. That's that sweet spot. All right. What I want you to know going forward is we have our next 2 lives on Tuesday and Thursday of next week. So November 10th, Tuesday, November 10th, and Thursday, November 12th. These are the topics. Tuesday, November 10th, our topic is who has time for self-care? Between stress and time management, with our lives, everything that's happening right now, who has time for self-care? That's Tuesday, November 10th, the topic for Tuesday, November 10th. And the topic for Thursday, November 12th, time management, money management, and relationships. What do they all have in common? Thank you so much for joining us today on Making Engaging Community Connections Accessible. As always, speak life and be kind to yourself that you may be kind to others. See you soon.